Alright, hello and welcome to ETeeski Tutorials. You are watching the Ultimate Game Dev Tutorial series. So in this episode we're going to continue practicing modeling some 3D objects for our video game. And in this episode I was thinking we should model something along the lines of this. So yeah, this is a little computer drawing that I sketched up just a minute ago. I just Google searched school computer, and I kind of just sketched a computer that just kind of reminded me of the type of computers that I used to use when I was in high school, because, well, that is the setting for this video game. Is you're in high school and robots come and attack your high school, and I don't know, some sort of crazy idea like that. But anyways, this is going to be the model that we're going to be creating. And I'm just going to let you know right off the bat that I have not modeled this computer before. So I am making that a deliberate choice to kind of go in a little bit unprepared for this model. I mean, in the past episodes you've seen that every once in a while something unexpected happens to me, but you know, I always have an idea of what I'm trying to accomplish, and on the technical side of what I need to accomplish. So if something unexpected happens, well, you know, you just adapt and adjust what you're doing to, you know, try to fix whatever problem you're having. And a lot of things with 3D modeling is trial and error until you become really familiar with the software. And still, you're always going to get a little bit of trial and error when you're doing 3D modeling. So in this episode, I am expecting that to happen a little bit more because I'm going to make this up as I go, and I'm doing that because I want you to hear my thoughts as I'm working on this. And you know, I'm going to talk about my thought process and problem solving, because inevitably you are going to run into problems as well, and you know, it might be helpful to watch somebody else try to figure out things along the way, so that, you know, you have an idea of what it's like to figure out things along the way, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that's enough of me blabbering on. Let's make this computer. Okay, so I have a new project in Blender, and of course we're going to start with a model that's somewhat similar to what we're trying to create. And well, this is a very boxy shape, everything that we're trying to create, so of course let's start with a cube. So I'm going to go to my toolbar over here, or is it toolbar, taskbar, whatever, the T key. Oh, which reminds me, I need to press that. There we go. Now you can see the buttons that I'm pressing. So let me go to cube, created a cube, and well, let's get started. I think what I want to start with is the computer monitor itself. And I think with this, I'm actually going to model this as a couple of separate objects, and then I'm going to combine them together into the same mesh so that I can show you that little trick. It's really not complicated at all. I believe it's just Control P, I believe. Let me double check that really quick. Blender shortcuts, whoops, wrong file. Nope, wrong file again. Where is, there it goes, there's the file that I was looking for. I believe to combine two objects, I believe it's just Control P or something along those lines. Let's scroll down. Oh, P is separate. Oh, Control J, that's what I was thinking of. Control J is to combine two objects into the same mesh. So yeah, sometimes that happens with Blender. You forget your shortcut keys and you gotta search them up on Google or in the list of shortcut keys that I have provided in the link in the description below. Alright, so anyways, yeah, let's get started, and I'm going to start with creating just this shape, and then I'm going to create the base, and I'm going to keep those as two separate objects because I want the monitor or the screen itself to be tilted back a little bit, and I think that's going to be easier if I keep these two shapes separate. And some of these little details we can just put into the texture, so we don't necessarily have to model all of these little buttons on the computer. We can just keep things pretty simple. So yeah, let's start with the monitor itself. So I'm going to take this cube. Let me hit T to get that out of my way so I have more room to see. And I'm going to press Tab to go into edit mode. And let's see, what should we do? Well, first of all, I'm going to flatten this thing out. And our computer monitor isn't necessarily going to be perfectly square, so let's drag that down a little bit as well. And that might be a little bit thick. I'm going to drag it in there like that, and if I hit Control B, I can probably, yeah, I'm going to bevel those edges just a little bit. And then what I'm going to do, now that I have those edges beveled with Control B, I'm going to hit I to inset, and I'm going to inset this just a little bit, just like that. That looks good to me. And now what I'm going to do is, well, one thing I forgot is that there's this little area down here. So we have to figure out, well, how we're going to get that. And I think all we really need to do is just grab that, and then Shift, grab that, and just drag it down a little bit. Will that give us? Yeah. Now it's nice and flat down there. So let's just drag that down until it's approximately the right shape. I'm going to press Tab to make sure that looks right. Yeah, I was wondering if I was going to get any weird skewing going on over here, like if this was going to be stretched at a weird angle. But because of the geometry game, like I mentioned in the previous episode, just the, playing around with geometry, and just the way that that was dragged down, that didn't end up getting stretched, so I'm okay with that. So cool. That's what I want. I think, in the texture, we'll put a little circle right there and a couple of little circles right there, and it'll look like buttons on a computer monitor. So now Now let me select this face right here, and I'm going to extrude it, but instead of going out, I'm going to go in just a little bit, not too far in, just about like that, just so that, because if you take a look at any computer monitor, the screen is always set on the inside just a little bit because the bevel of the computer monitor goes around it. Let me hit Tab just to make sure that still looks good. Yeah, that looks good. And I like to go back and forth between object mode and edit mode, because in object mode you don't see all of those lines and all, like all these dots for the faces and where all the lines connect. It just turns solid, so you can see what you're doing just a little bit better. Alright, one thing, I'm going to drag this up, and, well, actually I'm going to drag this so that it's pretty much in the center. It doesn't have to be perfect, because we're going to combine this with another object in just a bit. Alright, so we have a pretty good start for a computer monitor. So now let's work on the back of the computer monitor. And I don't have a drawing of the back of the computer monitor, so we're going to sort of have to kind of make it up. Alright, so just based on my experience of computer monitors, I know that we're probably going to do a shape where we're going to inset it, probably a little bit like that. And then, let's see, I'm trying to wonder, because I want like a little concave inward section around here, so I'm wondering, I think what I can do is I'm going to go into line mode. I'm going to select those two lines, press T, and go to my tools, and then I'm going to subdivide. And that is what I wanted. And I'm going to drag that down till about, I don't know, right about there. That looks pretty good to me. Alright, now let's see. I'm trying to decide if I want to extrude this or just pull it out. Let's try pulling it out first. Whoops, wrong direction, Control Z. Let's just pull it out and see what that does to the shape. Okay, so we're going to need to do some stuff to fix the back of this just a little bit. Actually, you know what? I think what I'm going to do is I am going to extrude this, and I'm going to introduce to you a new tool. One that we haven't used before, and that is, I don't even know what it's called. Merge? Yeah, it's called Merge. So I'm going to select that vertex, and then hold down Shift, and select that vertex, and let me zoom in so that you can really see. If you'll notice, one of the vertices is orange, and one of the vertices is white. It's really small and really hard to tell, but basically white means it was the most recently selected vertex that you have selected. Or, if you're using a line, it will be, white will be the most recent line that you selected. And when it comes to faces, it's not white, but it has that, not checkerboard pattern, all those little white dots inside of it. So you see the previous ones are orange, and the most recent one you've selected has those white dots in it. So that's important. That is the most recent thing that we have selected. So now when I hit, I believe is it Alt-M? Yes, it's Alt-M, and it says Merge. And we have a couple of options when we merge something. We can merge at first or at last, and we want to do at last because we want to merge this. We want to take this point and pull it over there. And we want to combine those 2 points, and we want them to combine right there. And you can see that we have a couple of options. We can merge it either at the first vertice that we selected, the last vertice, the center between those 2 vertices, and we have a couple of other options. But I'm going to do at last. And as you can see, that got pulled over there, and now they're combined into one. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. So let me press period to zoom in on that. And that one is white, so I selected that one last. So Alt-M, at last. And there we go, it merged my 2 selected vertices together. So now my computer monitor is, well, it's almost starting to get to the shape that I wanted. But one thing that I think that I want to do is I probably want to connect these 2 vertices right here on both sides of my computer monitor. Now that I think about it, I probably could have been using the mirror modifier to make my job go a little bit faster, but oh well, that's okay. Alright, so let's see. Well, I'm not really sure if that's going to give me the exact shape that I want, but oh well, let's give it a try and see what happens. So I'm thinking that, well, let's see, I'm trying to visualize how these shapes are going to change. Maybe I want to like merge. No, if I merge that down, that's going to get rid of this little concave section. So I think that I do want to combine it to that point right there. So to do that, I actually want to delete this face. So I'm going to delete that face. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to do it over here, see if it works, and then I'm going to do it on the other side. Let me hit A and period and zoom in just to make sure everything's centered and I can see everything. And let me hit T to get that out of my way as well. Alright, so let me go into vertice mode, and now I'm going to start connecting some vertices. So I'm going to make these 3 points a triangle, and I'm going to select those 3, and I'm going to hit F to create a face on the inside of those. And now I'm going to select those vertices, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to hit F to combine those. So, whoops, now that I have those like that, and the reason that I did that was because, well, let me hit Control Z a couple times and I'll show you what happened, or what would have happened if I just hit Control Z a bunch of times. Well, there we go. So if I were to take this and hit F like that, well, you can see I got a line there now, but the problem is that, and let me go into face mode and select this, you'll see I have a face here and I have a line here. So the thing is, I just have one face, and I want to have 2 faces because I want these faces to be separated so that I can stretch them. Whereas right now, I just have a line right here. So if I were to take this point and move it, and I change my view, it might be kind of hard to see, but the weird thing, let me actually take this again and select that. So I don't know, I guess it isn't like too big of a deal in this case, but sometimes you can get some really weird geometry when you just have a line going through a face just like that. We want to change this so that when I click here, like right click, that's a face, and I right click there and that's a face. But right now, this whole thing is a face, and well, that's just not really what we want. That's just going to give us problems down the line. And there might be a shortcut key. Let me hit Control Z, Z. Let me get rid of that line. Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. Oh man, this is taking forever. How many Control Z's do I need to do? There we go. I think maybe, is it C? Nope, C is the wrong key. Is it Alt C? Let's see, Alt C. Well, I don't know. I think there's a shortcut to actually do it the right way, but oh well, I don't really remember off the top of my head, so I'm going to do it the way that I know works. And, you know, sometimes deleting a face and then creating your own faces to fill in that deleted face sometimes is just the best option. Depends on what you're doing. You know, just sometimes it's easier just to be more careful and really carefully, you know, very accurately select what vertices you want to fill in the exact faces that you want. You know, just because sometimes the shortcuts don't really work in the right way that you expected. So anyways, now you can see that these are two separate faces, and that is what I wanted. That's going to give us less problems and less intersection and weird things along those lines. Alright, so now that I created those, now that I think about it, I'm really wondering what this geometry is going to do. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm just kind of experimenting around. So let's merge those and see what happens. I see that that got rid of my little concave section there, so I guess that's not really exactly what I wanted to do. You know what? I'm going to Control Z a couple of times, and I'm going to get rid of those two faces. I selected those things a bunch of times there. Alright, and I'm actually going to connect these a little bit differently. And now that I think about it, I think I want to delete this face as well. So let's delete that face, make sure that line isn't going in there because I'm going to create my own in just a second. So now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these three, and I'm going to hit F and create a face right there. And now I'm going to select that one, and that one, and I'm going to hit F to create a face like that. Now I'm going to select this one, and this one. And, you know, I'm just doing a bunch of triangles, as you can see. Whoops, wrong vertice. I'm going to select that one, and that one, and then hit F. And, well, it's a bit strange, but that is closer to what I was attempting to do. Because you know how in the back of computer monitors, you always have this spot where you plug everything in. So, it looks a bit odd, but, you know what? That's pretty close to what I was trying to do. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and, you know, we could play around with the geometry more until we get, you know, a super realistic computer monitor, but this gets the point across. It's a computer monitor. And I'm going to go to face mode, and, you know, I'm just going to select all of these just to make sure that they're separate faces, and it all looks, whoops, pretty good. One thing I want to be careful of is what direction these faces are facing. Because in Blender, it looks pretty good to me the way it is right now. I can see all the faces, but the problem is that these faces all have something called a normal, which is basically the direction that it's facing. And when I import this into Unity, there's a chance that one of these normals might be backwards and it will be invisible. That might not make a lot of sense, so I'm actually going to save this into my, let me go up, I'm in my, let's see, I go to Embotrination, then I go to my Ultimate GameDev project, Assets, Models, and I'm going to just save this in here and import it into Unity. So that we can see what it looks like when you have what's called an inverse normal, which basically means that the face is facing backwards, and that will make it invisible. And I'll show you that in just a second. And I'm going just to name this, I'll just call it computer.blend, and we'll just save it just like that. And oops, what did I just do? I think I selected a folder accidentally. So where is it? It's Ultimate GameDev project, assets, models, computer. Yeah. So let's save that. There we go. It's saved. And now I'm going to open up Unity, and hopefully I have the right folder in Unity, or the right project opened up in Unity. Let's see. There it is. Yes. And I will download the new version later. And there is my computer. So I'm going to drag and drop this into my scene. I'm going to pull it up a little bit so I can actually see it. And let's go full screen. Alright, so there is our computer monitor, and let's take a look at the back of it. Alright, so looks pretty good to me. And as you can see, whoops, let me actually turn that on so you can see it just a little bit better. As you can see, it looks good. It's all solid. So we ended up not having an inversed normal. So let me go ahead and do it on purpose inside of Blender. And, you know, this was the face that I was worried about because I wasn't sure which way it would be facing when I created that face, when I hit F on it. So I'm actually going to go to, I believe it's Mesh, Faces, and I'm going to flip normal. And it might look like nothing has changed, and when I deselect that and I go into object mode, it all looks pretty, you know, normal, right? Or it looks regular, it looks like it should be, because normal has two different meanings. So anyways, the normal, when you're talking about faces, is the direction that the face is facing. And when I just said normal, I meant normal as in it is a regular, everyday, what it is supposed to be thing. So yeah, that was kind of confusing. That kind of plays with the sentence a little bit. So anyways, oops, I forgot to save it. So now that I flipped that normal, let me save that. And now let's go into Unity and see what it looks like. So it's going to update. And now, as you can see, whoops, let me, trying to remember the difference between, there we go. Alright, so the controls are different in Unity as they are in Blender, so I got to get used to that. But as you can see, I can see through that little hole right now. There, my normal is backwards. And if I actually zoom in, this is going to be kind of tricky. If I zoom, I'm trying to like zoom my way through the face. That's going to be practically impossible. Maybe, can I, it's like too small. Actually, you know, maybe if I scale this up, I can show you. Yeah, that'll work. If I move my camera on the inside of this model, you can see there's the face right there. I can see it from the inside of the model, but if I move out, you can see that it's invisible from the other side. So there you can see it, and there you can't. So that means that my normal is facing in the wrong direction. So let me hit Control Z to return that back to its original scale. And I'm going to have to scale this down in Blender because that is a really large computer monitor. That's more like a big screen TV. Alright, so let me go to Blender and let me show you how to see when your normal is backwards. So let me hit T, and you can see there's my face. It looks completely the way it should be right there, right? It's not invisible. But if I hit N and go to my properties window and scroll down here to where it says Mesh Display, and then where it says down here normals, I am going to click on that right there, that little button. And what is it labeled? Display face normals as lines. Yep. And we can adjust how big these lines are. And I'm going to scale them down to about there. And those are just a visual representation of what direction these faces are facing, what their normal is. So yeah, just the direction that they're facing. And as you can see, this face is facing that way. You know, that face is facing that way. So these little blue lines are just pointing in the direction that these faces are facing. But if I zoom in on this one, you can see that it doesn't have a blue line coming out of it in this direction. And if I turn around and actually if I hit Z to go into wireframe mode so that you can see through it, you can see that this normal is facing that way. It's facing towards the inside of our model. So that means that, well, we're going to, it's going to be invisible because it's going to draw in this direction, not this direction, which is what we want. And there's a really easy fix when you run into this problem. All you need to do, and you know, if you have a bunch of weird inverted faces, so if you import your model into Unity and there's a bunch of faces that are just invisible that you thought would be there and they ended up not being there, just select your whole model and then go to Mesh, Faces, and then where is it? What was it called? I believe it is, oh no, never mind. You go to Mesh, Normals, Recalculate Outside. And bam, there it goes. It automatically worked and it automatically fixed that. So that tool usually works all the time. If it doesn't work and there's still some normals or some faces facing in the wrong direction, just select those faces and then go to Mesh, Faces, Flip Normals. And that's all you need to do. So there we go. So I can go ahead and disable that so that, you know, we just see our model. And now I'm going to fix the other side of my computer monitor to look like this side. So we need to take these two faces and delete them. And now let's go into vertice mode and let's see, how did it go? We take this one, this one, this one, hit F. Now we're going to take this one, and this one, hit F. Now we're going to take this one, and was it this one? And hit F. And this one, and this one, and hit F. Let's see, did I do that right? Nope, that was a little bit backwards. Let me hit Control Z a couple times. Alright, so I guess we do this one, then this one, and hit F. Perfect. This one, and this one, hit F. And perfect. Now it's all nice and symmetrical, and that's good enough for me. That's our computer monitor. Now let's create the base of our computer monitor. Yeah, this all looks good. So I'm going to go to Tab, and for now, I'm actually going to move this thing kind of out of my way. I'm going to move it out of my way just a little bit more, and I'm going to go to T, Create, Cube, and now let's create our base. So I'm going to go to Tab to Edit Mode. I'm going to first flatten this down, because you can see it starts with a little square, and then we can just inset it and then extrude up, and for the most part that will be our base. So that part should be pretty simple. Let's give it a try. So I'm going to scale the whole thing down a little bit. I'm going to flatten it down till about there. That looks pretty good to me. If I wanted to, I could bevel it. Not too much. Bevel it to, oh, I don't know, about there. That looks like a computer monitor. And now let me inset that with I. And I'm going to scale this on the Y-axis because I want that little stand to be a little bit skinnier and a little bit farther back. Now I'm just going to extrude that up, and I guess just to add a little bit of extra detail, I'm going to select those two lines and hit Control B, and I'm going to bevel those just a little bit. And, well, that was fast. There's the base of our computer monitor. So yeah, let's, well, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Edit Mode, select All, and I'm going to pull that up just a little bit. I don't think it's really going to matter because we're going to combine all these meshes later, and we'll pick a new center for our computer once we get the whole computer together. So let's move this computer monitor down in object mode. And I'm going to move it around until it looks like it's in the right place. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Let me hit A, period. There we go. So now my view is centered on what I want to look at. So that might look a little bit strange. I'm going to, I guess, bring that down a little bit to make it look like it's more anchored in there. Maybe I'll pull it back a little bit. Whatever just looks good. Now I need to tilt this computer monitor back a little bit because, well, most of the time when you see a computer monitor, it's tilted back a little bit. And that's what I have in my little drawing. That's what, you know, I expected it to look like. So I'm going to hit R and then X because I want it to rotate around the X axis. So remember, you know, pretend like that little red line is a toothpick and you roll it between your fingers, and that's going to make the computer monitor roll. So I'm going to hit R, X, and I'm going to tilt it back a little bit. That's probably a little too much. R, X, I'm going to pull it back just a little bit more. That's what I want. That looks pretty good. I'm going to pull it up a little bit, back a little bit, and that looks pretty good to me. So there we go. We have a pretty, actually that turned out better than I thought it would, a pretty good looking computer monitor. And that didn't take too much time at all, and I was totally making that up as I go. So awesome. Alright, so now that we have these two parts, let's go ahead and combine them together. And if I remember right, the shortcut key is Control J. So I'm going to right click select, shift right click select, so I have both of these selected in object mode, and now I'm going to hit Control J. And bam, there we go. They're now a part of the same mesh. So when I right click on this, it selects both of them. When I hit tab and go to edit mode, all of this is all together. So as you can see, I can edit this whole thing all at once. Now they are separate, so if I do select this and hit Control L, it will select all of the linked or connected parts. Well, technically they're still in the same mesh, but all of the linked parts, everything that's connected with either a line or a face, and all of the vertices and all of that. So, you know, they are separate, but they're still in the same mesh, if that makes sense. And then, you know, if I select that and hit Control L, it will select that. And, you know, if I hit A and select all, it selects everything that's inside of this same mesh. So that might sound a little bit confusing that they're separate but still together. So just remember that a mesh can consist of parts that aren't physically connected. If that doesn't make sense, well, it'll make sense in time, and it's not really a huge detail that you need to worry about too much for now. So anyways, there's our computer monitor, and that's looking pretty good. Now let's go ahead and create the actual computer itself. And as you can see, this is a little bit of an old computer. It still has a floppy drive in it, which I think is pretty funny. So I want to add that in there. So I'm going to drag that up and just get it out of our way, and I'll pull it back down in a minute. So now in object mode, I'm going to create a cube, and I am now going to go into edit mode and start editing this into a computer. And, well, we're going to change the size of all of these things for now, but proportionally to the computer monitor, this seems like almost the right size. We just need to make it less tall. So let's make it, oh, probably like that. And let's actually scale it on the x-axis down a little bit, like that. Let's see, is that right? Maybe we want to scale it up on the x-axis. Yeah, I think up, I guess we want it to be, I don't know. I guess that's pretty close. I'm just trying to imagine what a computer looks like. Let's pull it up a little bit. Period to zoom in. So there we go. That is starting to look like a computer. So let's go to our concept art that I sketched right here, and you can see that the front of it is rounded. So let's start by doing that. And the back of it has a slight rounded curve to it as well, but not quite as much. So I think I know what I'm going to do with it. So I'm going to start with the front. I'm going to bevel these two edges right here. So Control B, and let's bevel it, oh, I don't know, probably about there like that, because I don't want to make it too rounded. And, that's, rounded, but still sharp and boxy. So let's bevel it again. I'm going to select these two, and I'm going to hit Control B to bevel those, and I want to just kind of even that out and make it just a little bit more rounded. Probably, actually I'm going to make it, yeah, about there like that. And I think I'm going to do that one more time. Whoops, not Control D. What did Control D do? Oh, well, I guess it didn't do anything. Let's hit Control B, and let's do it like that. There we go. That looks pretty nice and rounded. And these horizontal lines are going to help me when I am creating the CD drive and the floppy drive. Alright, so there's the front of the computer. I'll come back to that in a second. I want to work on the back of the computer now. So I'm just going to bevel these two edges. So let's bevel that. And I'm thinking what I want to do is I want to create in a flat spot on the inside of this. So I want to leave, let's see, how am I going to do this exactly? I think I'm going to bevel this, and then I'm going to cut and take away and then inset. If that makes any sense at all, you'll see what I mean in just a second. So I don't want to bevel this too much. I just want to bevel it just a little bit, because I don't want it quite as rounded as the front was. Alright, there we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select all of these horizontal lines here. I'm going to hit T, and then go to my Tools tab, and I'm going to go to Subdivide, and I'm going to increase that, like that. There we go. And I'm going to pull these two lines out. So let me hit T to get that out of my way. And I wonder, can I hit Alt right click? Yes, there we go. I did a loop select. So it didn't select a complete loop. It just tried to get a loop, but then it stopped. So that is how loop select worked in that case. So now I'm going to hit Shift Alt right click, and that will add to my loop select. And there we go. So I've selected those. And of course, alternatively, I could have just went in and manually selected all of those lines, but it's faster to Alt right click, Alt Shift right click. And there we go. I have my selection that I wanted to have selected. Alright, so now I'm going to scale that on the x-axis to pull those lines out like that. And if these are scaling weird in the wrong direction, it's probably because of this. You want to set it to median point. That's what I usually have that on 90% of the time. So let's have those like that. And now I'm going to select these three faces, and I am going to delete them. And I am now going to create a flat area on the inside of this. So let's select this corner, that corner, and that corner, and let me hit F. There we go, that's what I wanted. And I still have these little holes in here. If I get the right angle, you might be able to see that I'm missing, well, it'll probably be easier to see in face mode. Whoops, 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 there we go. So as you can see, there's no face right there for me to select. And a lot of times it's easier to see a face because of the little black dot. The little black dot is the center of that face. So there's no faces there, so let's create those faces. So I'm going to right click on that and zoom in on it so that I can see a little bit better. Yeah, you can see there's nothing there, so we need to create that. So I'm going to go to vertice mode, select that, select that, select that, and select that. Move my view around a little bit, make sure I have the correct selection. There we go, looks good. Now I'm going to hit F, and let me go to face mode just to make sure. Yep, that is exactly what I wanted. I want that black dot right in the center of all those vertices that I just selected. So let me do the same thing on the other side. Vertice mode, 1, 2, 3, 4, F. Bam, there we go. And just to make sure those are facing in the right direction, I'm going to hit N and then click on that little normal button. And yeah, that blue line's going in the right direction, that blue line's going in the right direction, and that blue line's going in the right direction. So we're good. Our normals are facing in the correct direction. And if I wanted to make this look even more like a computer, I'm probably going to inset that just a tiny bit. And I'm going to select that center face that is a result of me insetting that, and I'm going to extrude that inwards just a little bit. And let me hit tab to go into object mode to make sure that looks right. Looks a bit strange, kind of weird for a computer, but well, for the most part, it still looks like a computer. So let's go back to tab mode, or I mean edit mode, and let's now work on adding a CD drive and a floppy drive. And is there anything else on the front of the computer? Well, I guess there's these buttons, but we'll add those in a texture. We don't have to worry about that. For now at least. We'll worry about that later down the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in half using my subdivide, and I'm going to select all of these lines to do that. So there we go. I have all those lines selected, and I'm going to go to subdivide just like that. And now let me whoops, there we go. That's what I wanted to select. I'm going to select that. Well, actually, I'm going to Alt right click. Yep, there we go. Loop select worked. And I'm going to press period to zoom in on that a little bit better, focus my view, and I'm going to pull that over. And I'm going to use these squares right here to create my CD drive and floppy drive. So I think I'm going to put my CD drive here and maybe my floppy drive here. So for this, let's see. I'm going to inset it just a tiny bit, not too much. I think that looks pretty good. Well, it's kind of close to the edge right there. I guess, all right, why don't we do this, let's actually do this carefully and make this look really good. And let's create another subdivide here. So T, subdivide, bam, there we go. So I'm going to loop select that, Alt right click, and I'm just going to pull that over. And now that I have that little stopper thing right there to make sure I don't go too far over when I inset this, I'm going to pull this over as well, just to, make it look right. And I'm just eyeballing this, just kind of making it up as I go, obviously. Whoops, not what I meant to do. I'm going to select face mode. There we go, face mode. And I'm going to make this my CD drive. So I'm going to inset it. Well, actually, nah, I'm not going to inset this. I'll inset my floppy drive because I want it to be smaller, but I want my CD drive to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to extrude this, but instead of extruding out, I'm going to lock this to the y-axis because you can see that that face is on an angle, so it wants to extrude out at the angle of that face. So I could go in, but CD drives don't really go in at an angle on your computer, right? Well, just like the G key, we can lock this to the y-axis, and now you can see that it's going out horizontally and also going in horizontally. So I'll just pull it in just a little bit just to make it look like a CD drive. There we go. And I guess if we wanted to, we could flatten this face out. So I can hit SY0 and bam, it has flattened it in this direction making it so that we got rid of that angle. So that's just a tiny little detail. I highly doubt anybody would even notice a difference. Okay, so now that we have our CD drive, let's create a floppy drive. And as you can see from our picture, the floppy drive is just a little bit smaller. So let's inset it. I to inset, and let's put it there like that. Let's make it a little bit shorter because floppy drives aren't really that long. So I'm going to hit SX, and I'm going to scale it to about there. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. Well, actually, that seems to be already horizontal because of where that face was. So I'm just going to pull that in, and I'll put it about there, not too far in. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That looks like a floppy drive. Let me hit tab to go into object mode to see if that looks right. Yeah, that looks pretty right. I'm pretty happy with the way that this all looks. And I think one thing I could do is I'm gonna experiment around. I'm gonna see if this looks right. I'm gonna select all these faces. I'm gonna hit I, and I don't want to go too far in, just like that. Now I'm gonna select all these faces, and I'm gonna hit E, and it's going to average out where all of those faces are angled, and that happens to be horizontal. But if it wasn't horizontal, we could just hit Y to lock it to the Y axis, and I'm just going to pull it in just a tiny bit, just to add a little bit more detail to our computer. Alright, that looks pretty good to me. Now what I want to do is I want to inset the sides of our computer a little bit, and I'm going to add a little bit of a bevel effect by using the inset tool as opposed to the bevel tool. So I'm going to select those two faces, and because they're not touching each other, they'll inset individually. So I'm going to hit I to inset those, and just inset them a tiny bit. There we go. And now I'm going to select the inside of those two faces, and well, I could either extrude these or I could inset or just scale them on the x-axis. I think I'm going to scale them on the x-axis. So SX, and I'm just going to pull them, I don't know, I'll experiment around. Do I want to go in or out? Probably in. I want them to go in just a little bit. But I'll show you how I could have extruded those. I can do Alt-E and do individual faces. And now you can see that I can have them go in or out however I want. So like, let's say I wanted them to go in. I could do it like that. Now that I'm looking at that, I think that actually looks more cool than just scaling them. So I think I'm going to leave it like that. Alright, so there we go. I'm pretty happy with that. That is my computer. So I'm going to drag this up a little bit. Put it there like that. I'm going to take my monitor, drag it down so it's sitting on top of the computer. There we go. It can be intersecting with it a tiny bit. I'm going to actually zoom in on it really close. Let me shift middle mouse to get really close. And I'm going to move this so it's just barely touching. There we go. That looks pretty good to me. It looks like our computer monitor is sitting on top of the computer. Maybe pull it back a little bit. Oh, I don't know. I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, it looks like we've pretty much created a computer and a computer monitor. Actually, now that I think about it, I think the computer looks a little big. So I'm going to go into edit mode, select all, scale it down just a tiny bit. Maybe move it down a tiny bit so that it's lined up with our floor or our grid. Now I'm going to go to this, and I'm going to pull it down. And I'm just going to eyeball it. That looks pretty good to me. Yeah, oh, it's hanging off the back of the edge there. Pull it back there like that. I guess we could have it hang off the back of the edge. Doesn't really matter. Alright, that looks pretty good to me. That looks like the right proportions. So now that we have that, let's select the both of them and hit Control J. There we go. That is looking pretty good to me. And if we want to, we can save it and check it in Unity. And bam, there we go. We have a computer in Unity, and that's looking pretty good, in my opinion. That looks like a somewhat realistic computer monitor and computer. I'm pretty happy with the way that that's going. So yeah, let's see, how much time do we have on this tutorial? Should we do the keyboard and mouse? Let's do a very, very simple keyboard and mouse. And we will just add the buttons as a texture. So I'm just going to do pretty much a rectangle. It's just a little bit skewed. And if we wanted to, I guess we could do wires, but that would take a, well, I guess I'll try to keep this tutorial like under an hour. So anyways, let's make sure, well, I guess I don't have to really worry about this being centered. I really don't care because usually the keyboard's off to the side a little bit anyways. So I'm going to hit T, create, cube, and then T to get that out of my way, edit mode. Let's scale this down, pull it out over here. Let's scale that down over there, or just move it down. Now let's move that there like that. Let's select the whole thing, scale it on the x-axis, pull it till it's about the size of a keyboard. Oh, excuse me. I think maybe we need to make it a little bit more like that. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. And I'm going to grab this front line and just pull it down a little bit so it's at an angle like a keyboard would be. And that looks pretty good to me. And let's go ahead and add a little bit of 3D shape to this. I'm going to inset it. And let's see, I guess I'll probably extrude this inwards, or maybe do I want to do it outwards? I'm trying to think of what it's going to look like when we just put buttons on this. That might look, whatever. Maybe it looks futuristic. Alright, so that looks pretty good to me. I'm going to pull it off to the side because usually your keyboard isn't directly in front of your computer. Pull it out a little bit. Yeah, that looks like a pretty good position where a keyboard pretty much would be in real life. And now let's quickly create a mouse, and I'll try to add a wire very quickly. You know, there might be faster ways to do a wire, but I'm just going to do the way that I know offhand. So anyways, now let's create a mouse. And let's see, I wonder what the best way to create a mouse would be. I'm thinking to actually do it with a sphere, and I'm going to simplify it down. I don't want quite so much geometry. Probably about there. Move that till it's probably about there. I'm just kind of guessing. I'm going to move that over. Move that over. Hit T to get that out of my way. And I'm going to go into edit mode. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees on the x-axis. So RX 90. There we go. And I hit 90 on my number pad. Oh, now that I'm looking at it, I wanted there to be a flat line that goes across here. So I guess I'm going to redo this. So I'm going to delete that. Yeah, delete T. I'm going to go to my sphere. And this time I'm going to look at it. Well, can I move it? Let's Control Z that. Let's move my 3D cursor so I can actually see my sphere when I create it. Let's zoom in on it. And I want to look at it from the top view. I want to really make sure there's a horizontal line there. So there we go. That's what I wanted. I want a horizontal line going across because I want to cut this in half. And I also want two segments over here because I want to use those to make the button of the mouse. So there we go. That's what I wanted. I'm going to tab to go into edit mode. And now with everything selected, I'm going to do RX 90 and rotate that 90 degrees. And I am going to delete the bottom half of this. So to do that, I'm going to hit 1 on my number pad to make my view in orthographic mode, or just not 2D mode, but flat mode, I guess is the best way to describe it. And I'm going to hit Z to go into wireframe, or I can select this button here where it says limit selection to visible. I can delete that, so that will mean that if I use my, let me hit A to deselect. If I use my box select tool and go like that, that means that it will select the back just like that. But let me turn that on and then press 1 again and then do box selection and show you what it does when this button is selected where it says limit selection to visible. You can see that I only selected the faces that were facing towards my camera, and that's not necessarily what I want. So I can either do that, or I can go into wireframe mode and press B and do it like that, and there you can see I have everything selected. So either way, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. There we go, Control Z. Either way, yeah, you can select things behind what you're selecting, but you either using that button down there or using wireframe mode. So I'm going to delete those, delete faces. There we go. And now I want to create a face and solidify the bottom there. And I believe I can go into line mode and Alt right click, and there we go. I selected a loop. I'm gonna hit F to fill that in, and there we go. Let's scale this a little bit. I'm just gonna hit SY, make it a little bit longer. I'm gonna hit Alt right click there, make sure that's what I want to have selected, and I'm gonna pull that back a little bit, I think. Maybe I'm also gonna do the same thing with this one, pull that back a little bit, maybe. Actually, now that I think about it, I think I want to bevel that. So I'm gonna bevel the vertice. So bevel. Beveling a vertice doesn't work. I thought that would work, but apparently not. Let's see. Well, I guess I can just pull it in like that, and that looks pretty good. That kind of looks like a mouse. I'm going to flatten it on the Z-axis a little bit. So S, Z, make it a little bit flatter. Well, it's not the prettiest mouse in the world, but let's not spend too much time on it. You can spend more time on it if you want, but this tutorial's already pretty long. So I'm going to inset these two faces here. I'm wondering if I take this and I set it to individual and then hit I. Nope, it still insets them together. So I guess I'm just going to inset them individually, and I'm going to go to I, and I'm going to do, let's see, 0.8. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. I'm going to right click to cancel that. I'm going to hit I and then maybe do 2. Nope, that is definitely not what I want. I'm just trying to figure out what numbers I'm supposed to press. I, -1. Right click. Well, I guess I'm just going to eyeball it. Oh well, so I'm going to inset that. Inset that till it looks pretty much the same. Good enough. And I'm going to raise it up a little bit because those are buttons of a mouse. And I'm going to take that vertice and I'm going to pull it back a little bit, or pull it inwards. And there we go, just like that. And I'll add a little bit of extra detail. Alt right click to select, Alt Shift right click to select that loop. There we go, we got a loop. And I'm going to press Control B, and I'm going to bevel that just a little bit, like that. Let's take a look around. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. That looks like a pretty good mouse. Let's select the whole thing and let's scale that down. And now let's move it in place. So let me change my view. There we go. Move it down. That looks pretty close to where I want it to be. Let's make it so it's not floating off the table there. So I'm just going to get it as close as I can. I guess I can press 1 or Alt 1. Or Control 1, that's what I meant. And there we go, I have a better view of what I'm doing. So I'm going to move that there like that. Now in 3D mode, I guess I should scale it a little bit. And move it there like that. And you know what, let's add a little bit of detail and let's rotate it on the Z-axis. Because, your mouse isn't always going to be perfectly straight like that. Let's go ahead and do the same thing with the keyboard. So Tab, Edit Mode, select all, R, Z, and let's rotate that as well. Something that just looks just slightly off center. And I'm going to hit Control 1, and I want to move that down to where a red line is there. Oh, it looks like I got to move the mouse as well. I can just do that from object mode. There we go. That looks good enough to me. And now let's select that, and Control J, and there we go. We have a computer. That looks pretty awesome to me. Let's save that, and let's go into Unity, see how it looks. Looks pretty good to me. We can check it around, make sure we don't have any invisible faces or inverted faces. Looks pretty good to me. Yeah, I like that computer. The only thing left is to scale it to, actually be, roughly the right size, because as you can see, it's pretty gigantic. So let's go to Blender. Whoops, I did not mean to open up Steam. Let's close that. There we go. Alright, let's go into edit mode, select all, and let's just scale it down. Oops, not what I meant to do. I gotta go down here to my pivot point setting down here, go to median point, and now let's scale it down. Perfect, that's what I wanted it to do. And I'm just kind of guessing. I'm gonna press Control 1 to make this line up on the red. There we go, or basically Z, or I want this to line up so that 0 on the z-axis is the floor of this object. And I'm actually wondering, I think the orange dots I need to move so that that is actually lined up on the floor. So I might do that in a second. I'm going to go into Unity and see. There we go. That actually looks like exactly the right size. And yeah, now that I'm looking at this, we need that orange dot to be on the ground right there, because I'll show you real quick. Just drag and drop my computer onto the desk, and you'll see that my computer is in the middle of the desk. Because the way that it works when you're dragging and dropping stuff from your project into the scene view is that it takes the center point of your mesh and it sticks it to the surface of something. In this case, I dragged it onto the table. So it's going to stick that center point to the table. So we want that center point to be the bottom of our computer, so the computer more easily sticks to the top of our table, so we don't have to manually drag it up every time. It just makes our job easier in the long run. So let's delete that, and let's go into Blender and fix that center point. So you can see that my center point is that orange dot right there. So I am going to press Tab to go into Object Mode, and I'm going to press N to go up here. And I'm going to go to where it says Transform Location, and I'm going to change this to, you know what, I'm going to change it to 0, 0, 0. There we go. Now you can see that orange point is right there, just on the flat part of this red line and green line, which means it's 0 on the z-axis. So it's 0 on everything. And that's not necessarily totally necessary, because our center point is going to be based on just that orange dot, not where this orange dot is inside of our Blender scene. So, you know, I just think it makes it easier because it's lined up on this red line, and I can use that to line up the computer a little bit better. So now I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to move this when it's in edit mode, and I'm going to hit N to get that out of my way so that I can see a little bit better. And now I'm going to hit Control 1 on the number pad, and I'm going to zoom in so that I can, whoops, Control 1, and then Shift middle mouse. There we go. I'm going to zoom in so that I can see really close, and I'm going to bring that down just like that. That looks pretty good to me. Maybe I'll move it over so that it's really centered. There we go. That looks good to me. Let's look at it from this direction. I guess I could pull it back there like that. That might just be a little bit better. So there we go. I'm going to save that, Control S, and now I'm going to go into Unity, and it should update, and bam, now it's in the correct position. So now when I drag and drop a computer on top of something, it's just lined up nice and easy, and it's a lot easier to do level design that way. And I'm going to delete that one because that one's no longer in the correct position. So if we want a computer on the floor, we just drag and drop it on the floor, and it's nice and lined up and actually looks like it's sitting on the floor. So yeah, that is, well, that's one of the reasons why the center point is very important. I mean, that's just one small reason. It's even more important when it comes to programming. And, you know, that's going to come in with game design and writing code. So if that's something you're not learning with this tutorial series, if you're just learning art, just have that in mind so that when you're working with a programmer, you know, you'll know how to give the programmer the correct center point so that they know what to do with it, if that made any sense at all. Alright, well, this tutorial is really long, so I'm going to wrap it up. And yeah, I hope that this was educational and you got to watch me kind of make this all up as I go, and my thought process of how I was going to do all of this stuff. And, you know, you can see how concept art can be super, super useful. You don't have to have the greatest drawing in the world. There are some very, very talented concept artists out there. Sometimes it can be very helpful to actually work with a concept artist and have somebody else draw a picture and then you model from that picture. Or you can just go on Google image search and just search for a picture of something, or pick an object that you see around you in real life and either take a picture of it, or, you know, if it's in the same room as you while you're doing your model. Like, for example, you know, if you're on a computer, I assume that you probably have a computer monitor in front of you or a laptop in front of you or something along those lines. So you can always just look at that when you are creating your 3D model. But it's super useful to be looking at something when you're creating a 3D model, because sometimes you can create it just directly out of your imagination, but sometimes things just look more realistic or just more defined, and they just look better when you do it from a picture, or from a reference from an object, something along those lines. So yeah, feel free to continue to experiment around and maybe add more detail to this computer, or possibly create another object. Hopefully, watching me get stuck or make decisions in this episode might show you, just some of the different things, different thought processes that you can go through when you're creating your own 3D models that, you don't actually create from a step-by-step tutorial. So hopefully that is helpful. And once again, just practice, practice, practice. So I guess until my next episode, I will see you later, and keep making games.